I'll stand by him. Until the end. Those 6 words changed everything. Inside a courtroom packed with attorneys, investors, and the press, no one expected the voice of a quiet Filipina housekeeper to stop time. But when billionaire tech mogul Blake Whitman was abandoned by his entire legal team just minutes before trial, it was Analind de la Peña, apron still tied, hands shaking, who stepped forward. She wasn't a lawyer, not anymore, but she had studied in secret. She had memorized every page of his case while scrubbing his flaws, and she was the only person in the room who wasn't trying to destroy him. What started as an act of courage would grow into a storm of revelations, betrayal, and the quiet power of one woman who refused to be silent. This is a story of truth, second chances, and the kind of strength you only find when no one else stands with you. The morning light filtered through the massive windows of the Whitman estate, casting long shadows across the imported marble floors that Analind de la Peña had polished to perfection only hours before. She moved quietly through the palatial Chicago home, her small frame nearly disappearing against the backdrop of soaring ceilings and museum-worthy artwork. At 25, Analind carried herself with the careful precision of someone who had learned to move through the world without disturbing it. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, her uniform pressed despite the early hour. No one in the house noticed how her eyes lingered on the documents scattered across Blake Whitman's home office desk, or how she tilted her head slightly to catch fragments of his tense phone conversations. "This is completely unacceptable, Martin," Blake's voice boomed from behind the closed door of his study. "The trial begins tomorrow, and you're telling me there are inconsistencies in our documentation. Where is Arvin? He handles all my contracts." Analind slowed her movements, carefully arranging fresh flowers in a vase outside his office. "Well, find him. This isn't like him to disappear without—" There was a pause. "What do you mean the signatures don't match? That's impossible." She had worked for Blake Whitman for nearly 2 years, ever since she'd been forced to leave Columbia Law School during her second year. The memory still stung. The dean's sympathetic face, the scholarship committee's regret that they couldn't extend additional aid, the tearful call to her father in Cebu, who was recovering from a stroke and couldn't work. "You take care of yourself, Anak," he had said, his voice weak but determined. "Your education can wait. Your life cannot." But her education hadn't waited. It had transformed. Each night after her 12-hour shift at the Whitman estate, Analind returned to her tiny apartment in Bridgeport, pulled out her law textbooks, the only possessions she couldn't bear to sell, and studied by the dim light of a desk lamp that flickered with the building's unreliable electricity. Back in Blake's hallway, the tech CEO's voice had risen to a near shout. "I built this company from nothing, Martin. Nothing. And now you're telling me that some documentation error could bring everything down? Find Arvin. Fix this. The trial is tomorrow, and I expect every member of my legal team present and prepared." The door swung open suddenly, and Analind nearly dropped the vase. Blake Whitman stood before her, tall, imposing, with the confident posture of a man unaccustomed to obstacles. At 42, his dark hair was threaded with distinguished silver at the temples, his tailored suit impeccably fitted to his athletic frame. "Sir," she said, lowering her eyes as she'd learned to do, "I'm sorry. I was just refreshing the flowers." Blake looked through her, not at her, the way most employers did. "Fine," he said dismissively, already returning to his phone. "And bring coffee to my study, Black. I'll be working late." "Yes, sir." As she turned to leave, a document slipped from a folder tucked under his arm, floating to the floor like an autumn leaf. Blake continued down the hallway, unaware. Analind knelt to retrieve it, a contract with signatures that didn't quite match on different pages. One signature was slightly larger, with a more pronounced loop on the W of Whitman. Someone had been practicing Blake's signature. Practicing, but not perfecting. Her heart raced as her legal training kicked in, eyes catching discrepancies that might seem insignificant to others. The document was a transfer of intellectual property rights, the foundation of Blake's entire empire, and according to this, he had signed away controlling interest months ago, except he hadn't. She knew his signature from the checks he wrote, the notes he left for household staff. This wasn't it. "Miss de la Peña," Blake's voice made her jump. He had returned, eyeing the paper in her hands with sudden intensity. "That's confidential." She handed it over, careful to keep her expression neutral. "It fell, sir. I was just picking it up." His eyes narrowed slightly, studying her face for the first time since she'd begun working in his home. "You were looking at it rather carefully for someone. Just picking it up." Analind hesitated, weighing her options. She needed this job. Her father's medical bills, her small apartment, the money she sent home each month, it all depended on her salary. But something wasn't right, and the law student in her couldn't stay silent. "The signatures," she said quietly. "They don't match." Blake's eyebrows rose in surprise. "What did you say?" "Page 3 and page 7. She pointed without touching the document. "The signatures are different, and neither matches the one on your personal checks." He stared at her for a long moment, reassessing the woman who had been invisible to him until now. "How would you know that?" "I process the household accounts, sir." She hesitated, then added, "And I was a law student before." "Before what?" "Before this," she said simply, gesturing to her uniform. Blake studied the document again, then looked back at her. "Make that coffee, then come to my study." Later, seated across from him at his massive desk, Analind felt acutely out of place. Her uniform seemed to glow under the warm lighting of his study, a stark reminder of the worlds that separated them. "Columbia Law," Blake said, reading from a tablet. "Second year full scholarship, impressive LSAT scores." He looked up. "You were on track to graduate at the top of your class." She sat very still, hands folded in her lap. "My father got sick. I had to leave. And now you clean my house." "Yes, sir." Blake leaned back in his leather chair. "What else have you noticed, Ms. de la Peña? About the documents? About my case?" Analind took a deep breath. "Your assistant, Arvind de Vera. He's been acting strangely for months, taking calls in the garden where he thinks no one can hear. Working late after you've gone to bed. You've been watching him?" "I notice things," she said simply. "It's easy to notice things when people don't notice you." The billionaire's expression darkened. "And now he's disappeared. The day before my trial begins." He tapped his fingers on the desk. "What would you do, Ms. de la Peña, if you were still that law student?" The question hung between them. A test, perhaps, or something more. "I'd check the metadata on all electronic documents," she said carefully. "I'd review every contract signed in the last year, and I'd find out who benefits if you lose everything." Blake Whitman's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Interesting," he said, studying her with new respect. "Very interesting indeed." The federal courthouse in downtown Chicago loomed against the morning sky, its neoclassical columns a stark contrast to the sleek glass towers surrounding it. Media vans lined the street, reporters clutching coffee cups as they prepared for what promised to be the business story of the year. United States v. Whitman Technologies. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Junior associates whispered behind legal pads. Journalists jockeyed for better seats. Investors and tech industry rivals pretended not to recognize each other as they filed into the gallery. Blake Whitman sat alone at the defense table, his normally confident posture now rigid with tension. His eyes repeatedly darted to the courtroom doors, then to his watch. His entire legal team, 7 attorneys from one of the most prestigious firms in the country, was inexplicably absent. Analind slipped into the back row of the gallery, still wearing her uniform. She hadn't been scheduled to work that morning but had come anyway, driven by a growing unease about what she had discovered. After her conversation with Blake the previous evening, she had stayed up all night reviewing the case files he had reluctantly shared. What she found had kept her awake until dawn. Inconsistencies in contracts, missing signatures, backdated agreements, a pattern that pointed to something far more calculated than simple errors. Judge Eleanor Martinez entered the courtroom, her black robes flowing behind her as she took her place at the bench. Her gaze swept the room, settling on Blake's empty defense table. "Mr. Whitman," she said, her voice crisp with disapproval. "Where is your counsel?" Blake stood, the muscles in his jaw working. "Your Honor, I'm not entirely sure. I've been unable to reach them this morning." A ripple of whispers swept through the courtroom. The lead prosecutor, a sharp-featured woman named Rebecca Chen, rose with barely concealed satisfaction. "Your Honor, if Mr. Whitman is unprepared to proceed, the government requests—" The courtroom doors swung open. Martin Lai, the silver-haired managing partner of Blake's law firm, strode in with a grave expression. He approached the defense table but did not sit. "Your Honor," he said, voice carrying throughout the now silent room, "I must—" regretfully inform the court that our firm can no longer represent Mr. Whitman in this matter. He placed a file on the table. Irreconcilable differences in our approach to the case have emerged, and we must withdraw. Blake's face drained of color. What? Martin, what are you talking about? We discussed strategy just yesterday. Judge Martinez frowned. Mr. Lai, this is highly irregular. Trial is scheduled to begin today. I understand, Your Honor. However, circumstances have come to light that make our continued representation impossible. Martin straightened his tie, not meeting Blake's incredulous stare. The documentation has been filed with the clerk. Blake grabbed Martin's arm. This is my company we're talking about. Everything I've built. You can't just walk away. I suggest you seek new counsel, Blake, Martin said quietly, removing Blake's hand from his sleeve. Immediately. Judge Martinez banged her gavel as murmurs erupted throughout the courtroom. Order. Mr. Whitman, this puts the court in a difficult position. I'll grant a brief recess for you to address this situation, but I cannot indefinitely delay these proceedings. Rebecca Chen rose again. Your Honor, the government has witnesses scheduled. Any delay would constitute a significant burden. A 2-hour recess, Ms. Chen, Judge Martinez said firmly. Not a minute more. Mr. Whitman, I strongly suggest you use this time wisely. As the judge left the bench, chaos erupted in the courtroom. Reporters rushed toward the doors, already calling in the breaking news. Blake remained at the defense table, stunned into immobility. Analind watched as Martin Lai exited the courtroom, followed by 2 other men she recognized from Blake's home, board members of Whitman Technologies. Their expressions were somber, but their eyes held something else. Triumph. She had seen that look before, in law school moot court competitions, the look of someone who had successfully executed a trap. Blake was now surrounded by reporters shouting questions. His face had transformed from shock to fury as he pushed through the crowd toward the exit. Analind moved to intercept him, clutching her worn leather messenger bag containing the notes she had made overnight. Mr. Whitman, she called, her voice nearly lost in the chaos. He didn't hear her, continuing toward the door with the desperate energy of a man whose world was collapsing. Analind pushed forward more insistently, finally reaching his side. Mr. Whitman, I need to show you something. He turned, irritation flashing across his features before recognition set in. Miss Della Pena, what are you doing here? I found something in the contracts, she said urgently. The metadata. This isn't the time, he snapped, continuing toward the door. It's exactly the time, she insisted, keeping pace. Your signature was forged on documents dated when you were in Tokyo last spring. I checked your travel records against the timestamps. Blake stopped abruptly, causing a reporter to collide with his back. What did you say? They've been planning this for months, Analind continued, her voice low. The contracts, the missing files, Arvin's disappearance, it's all connected. For a moment, Blake's expression shifted from desperation to something like hope, quickly followed by skepticism. And you figured this out overnight? I've been watching for months, she replied. I just didn't know what I was seeing until now. Before Blake could respond, the courtroom doors opened again, and Judge Martinez's clerk appeared. Mr. Whitman, the judge requests your presence in chambers immediately. Blake hesitated, looking between the clerk and Analind. Go, she said. I'll be here. As Blake followed the clerk, Analind sank onto a nearby bench, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Mrs. Abernathy, the Whitman estate's housekeeper, asking where she was and why she had missed her morning shift. Analind started to type a response, then stopped. For the first time since leaving law school, something more important than keeping her job had emerged. The truth. She looked up to see Blake returning from the judge's chambers, his expression grim but determined. He scanned the hallway until he spotted her, then walked directly to where she sat. The judge has given me until this afternoon to find new counsel, he said without preamble. Otherwise we proceed and I represent myself. Analind nodded, understanding the impossibility of his situation. No major firm would take on a case this complex, with only hours to prepare. Blake Whitman, for all his wealth and power, was effectively defenseless. There's one more option, she said quietly, heart pounding in her chest. What's that? She met his gaze directly. Me. Blake laughed, a short, incredulous sound that drew stares from people passing in the hallway. You? You're a housekeeper. I was a law student, she corrected. I completed 2 years at Columbia before I had to leave. I've been studying independently since then. Studying isn't practicing, Blake countered. You don't even have a degree, let alone a license to practice law. In extraordinary circumstances, a judge can allow a non-attorney to represent someone, Analind said, recalling the procedure from her civil practice course. It's rare, but it happens. Blake shook his head. This is federal court, Ms. De La Peña. A multi-billion-dollar case with international implications, not a traffic ticket. I know the facts of your case better than anyone else could. Learn them in a few hours, she insisted. I've been reviewing your documents for months while organizing your office. While cleaning my office, he corrected sharply. Analind straightened, a flash of pride cutting through her exhaustion. Yes, while cleaning your office and noticing what no one else did. The judge's chambers felt smaller than its actual dimensions, the weight of the decision hanging in the air, making the walls seem to close in. Judge Martinez sat behind her desk, reading glasses perched on the bridge of her nose as she reviewed the hastily prepared motion. Ms. De La Peña, she said finally, looking up to study the young Filipina woman standing before her. You're asking me to allow a non-attorney to represent a defendant in a federal securities fraud trial, one of the most complex cases on my docket this year. Analind stood straight, hands clasped to hide their trembling. Yes, Your Honor, and you have completed 2 years of law school, but not graduated. That's correct, Analind confirmed. I was at Columbia Law School, ranked 3rd in my class when I had to withdraw for financial reasons. Judge Martinez removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Ms. De La Peña, I appreciate your initiative, but this is highly irregular. From his seat beside Analind, Blake spoke up. Your Honor, I understand the unusual nature of this request, but given the circumstances, my entire legal team withdrawing hours before trial, I believe Ms. De La Peña represents my best option. The judge turned her attention to Blake. Mr. Whitman, you're a billionaire with vast resources. Surely you could find a licensed attorney willing to request a continuance and take your case. Any attorney I hire today would need weeks to understand the complexities of this case, Blake argued. Ms. De La Peña already knows the details intimately. She discovered discrepancies that my legal team either missed or deliberately ignored. Rebecca Chen, the prosecutor who had been invited to the Chamber's discussion, scoffed. Your Honor, this is absurd. The government has prepared for months to try this case against experienced counsel. Mr. Whitman's staffing issues shouldn't further delay these proceedings. Judge Martinez held up a hand to silence her. Ms. Chen, I'm well aware of the government's position. She turned back to Analind. In rare circumstances, federal courts have permitted non-lawyers to represent others, but those situations usually involve close family members or cases far less complex than this one. Analind took a deep breath. Your Honor, I understand your concerns, but I believe there's more happening here than a simple case of securities violations. The timing of Mr. Whitman's legal team's withdrawal, combined with the document discrepancies I've found, suggests a coordinated effort to ensure Mr. Whitman has no adequate representation. The judge's eyebrows rose. That's a serious allegation, Ms. De La Peña. I wouldn't make it if I didn't have evidence to support it, Analind replied, her voice gaining confidence. She opened her messenger bag and removed a folder. These are contracts supposedly signed by Mr. Whitman on dates when he was verifiably out of the country. The metadata on the electronic versions has been altered. Judge Martinez accepted the folder, flipping through its contents with growing interest. And you compiled this overnight? No, Your Honor. I've been noticing irregularities for months while working in Mr. Whitman's home. I just didn't understand their significance until recently. The judge studied Analind for a long moment, then looked at Blake. Mr. Whitman, do you understand that if I allow this, you cannot later claim inadequate representation? I do, Your Honor, Blake confirmed. Judge Martinez sighed, closing the folder. Against my better judgment, I'm going to allow this, conditionally. Ms. De La Peña, you may participate in today's proceedings. If by the end of the day I determine this arrangement isn't working, I will order a continuance and require Mr. Whitman to retain licensed counsel. Is that understood? Analind nodded, relief washing over her. Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Don't thank me yet, the judge warned. You're stepping into a lion's den. When they returned to the courtroom, a buzz of whispers swept through the gallery as Analind took her place beside Blake at the defense table. She was acutely aware of her uniform. She hadn't had time to change, and the stares it attracted from the polished attorneys and business executives filling the room. "All rise," the clerk called as Judge Martinez entered. After everyone was seated, the judge addressed the courtroom. "I've granted Mr. Whitman's request to have Ms. Analind de la Peña represent him today. While unusual, this arrangement is permitted under the circumstances. Let's proceed." Rebecca Chen stood, buttoning her tailored suit jacket. "Your Honor, the government moves to begin with opening statements." "Proceed, Ms. Chen," Judge Martinez directed. As the prosecutor launched into a damning narrative of corporate greed and deception, Analind focused on taking detailed notes, while listening for inconsistencies or overstatements. Blake sat beside her, his jaw tight, occasionally sliding her small notes about factual errors in Chen's presentation. "Mr. Whitman deliberately misled investors," Chen declared, pacing before the jury. "He signed over intellectual property rights while simultaneously claiming exclusive ownership in SEC filings. The evidence will show a pattern of deception designed to artificially inflate his company's stock price before a planned sale." When Chen finished her opening statement, all eyes turned to Analind. Judge Martinez nodded encouragingly. "Ms. de la Peña, your opening statement." Analind rose slowly, smoothing her uniform skirt, keenly aware of how out of place she appeared. She took a deep breath and walked to the center of the courtroom. "Your Honor, members of the jury," she began, her voice soft but clear. "My name is Analind de la Peña. Until yesterday, I was Mr. Whitman's housekeeper." A few jurors exchanged surprised glances. "I know what you're thinking," Analind continued. "What is she doing here? Where are the expensive attorneys in tailored suits? What happened to Mr. Whitman's legal team?" She paused, allowing the questions to hang in the air. "Those are excellent questions, and they go to the heart of this case because what happened to Mr. Whitman's legal team is the same thing that happened to his contracts, his signatures, and his company records. They were manipulated, altered, and ultimately removed, right when he needed them most." Analind walked closer to the jury box, making eye contact with several jurors. "The prosecution wants you to believe that Mr. Whitman is a billionaire who risked everything to make even more money. But the evidence will show something very different. It will show a coordinated attack on Mr. Whitman's company, one that began months ago with forged signatures, altered contracts, and fabricated records." Rebecca Chen jumped to her feet. "Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is making unfounded accusations." "Not counsel," Judge Martinez corrected. "And Ms. de la Peña, please limit your opening to what the evidence will show." "Yes, Your Honor," Analind nodded. "The evidence will show that signatures attributed to Mr. Whitman were created on days when he was not even in the country. The evidence will show metadata altered to change the dates of document creation. And the evidence will show who benefits from Mr. Whitman's downfall." She returned to the defense table, picking up a document. "This case isn't about a billionaire's greed. It's about what happens when someone builds something valuable enough that others will do anything to take it. Thank you." As Analind returned to her seat, she noticed something unexpected in the gallery. A young woman, watching intently, making notes on a tablet. Their eyes met briefly, and the woman gave an almost imperceptible nod of approval before looking away. Blake leaned close to whisper, "Who is that?" "I don't know," Analind replied softly, "but I think we just found an ally." The government's first witness was a financial analyst from the SEC, a serious man with wire-rimmed glasses who testified about discrepancies in Whitman Technologies' securities filings. Analind listened carefully, marking sections of the reports being projected onto the courtroom screen. When it was her turn for cross-examination, she approached slowly, still conscious of her uniform, but now too focused on the case to let it undermine her confidence. "Mr. Harrington, in your analysis of the SEC filings, did you personally verify the authenticity of the signatures on the intellectual property transfer documents?" The analyst blinked. "That's not my department. I analyze financial statements and disclosure accuracy." "So you didn't verify that Mr. Whitman actually signed these documents?" "No, I assumed they were verified during the investigation," Analind nodded. "And the electronic signatures, did you check when they were created or if they matched Mr. Whitman's other electronic signatures?" "Again, that would be outside my purview," he said, slightly defensive now. "Just one more question," Analind said. "Did you compare the dates these documents were supposedly signed with Mr. Whitman's travel records?" "No, I did not." "Thank you, Mr. Harrington." The morning proceeded with 2 more government witnesses, each testifying to parts of the case without addressing the fundamental question of whether Blake had actually signed the damaging documents. During the lunch recess, Analind and Blake huddled in a small conference room, reviewing their notes. "You're doing remarkably well," Blake admitted, genuine respect in his voice for the first time. "But they haven't brought out their key witnesses yet." No," Analind said, rubbing her tired eyes. "We need to find Arvin de Vera. He's the missing piece." A soft knock interrupted them. The door opened to reveal the young woman Analind had noticed in the gallery earlier. She was professionally dressed in a navy pantsuit, her sleek black hair cut in a sharp bob. "Excuse me," she said, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "My name is Erica Sison. I work for Alter Holdings as a junior financial analyst." She hesitated. "I have information about your case." Blake stood abruptly. "Alter Holdings? Our main competitor?" Erica nodded. "That's why I'm here. I've been processing the acquisition documents for Whitman Technologies, documents being prepared weeks before your legal troubles became public." Analind's eyes widened. "You're saying Alter was planning to acquire Whitman Technologies before any of this happened?" "Not just planning," Erica replied, placing a flash drive on the table. "They've been orchestrating it. Martin Lai has been working with our general counsel for months." Blake's face flushed with anger. "Martin, my own attorney." "It gets worse," Erica continued. "Your assistant, Arvin de Vera, was paid to alter documents and provide inside information. He's been in Santa Barbara for the past week, staying at a property owned by an Alter subsidiary." Analind picked up the flash drive. "Why are you telling us this? You're risking your job." Erica's expression hardened. "Because I didn't sign up to destroy someone's life's work through fraud. What they're doing is wrong." She checked her watch. "I have to get back before anyone notices I'm gone." "Wait," Blake said. "Will you testify to this?" Erica hesitated. I don't know. I have a family to support." "We understand," Analind said gently, "but this information alone might not be enough without testimony." "Let me think about it," Erica said, moving toward the door. "There's a journalist you should talk to, Marcus Green from the Chicago Sentinel. He's been investigating Alter Holdings for months. He might be able to help." After Erica left, Analind immediately plugged the flash drive into her laptop. It contained dozens of emails, meeting notes, and financial projections, all pointing to a coordinated plan to devalue Whitman Technologies through legal troubles, then acquire it at a fraction of its worth. "This is exactly what we needed," Analind said, quickly scanning the documents. "But we can't just present these in court without authentication. We need Erica to testify." Blake paced the small room. "Or we need to find Arvin, force him to admit what he did." The afternoon session began with the government's star witness, Jeffrey Palmer, Alter Holdings CEO. As he took the stand, his confident smile faltered slightly when he spotted Erica, sitting in the back of the courtroom. Rebecca Chen led him through carefully prepared testimony about meetings with Blake, where he allegedly discussed transferring intellectual property to avoid regulatory scrutiny. "And Mr. Whitman signed these transfer agreements in your presence?" Chen asked, displaying the documents on the courtroom screen. "Yes, he did," Palmer confirmed smoothly. "On April 15th of last year, in our Chicago offices." Analind made a note, then glanced at Blake, who subtly shook his head. When it was her turn to cross-examine, she approached slowly, holding a small leather-bound book. "Mr. Palmer, you testified that Mr. Whitman signed these documents on April 15th in your Chicago office, correct?" "That's right," he confirmed. Analind opened the book. "This is Mr. Whitman's passport. On April 15th of last year, he was in Tokyo, Japan, attending a technology conference. His passport was stamped by Japanese immigration on April 13th, and again on April 17th when he departed." She handed the passport to the court clerk. "I'd like to enter this as Defense Exhibit A." Palmer's composure slipped. He must have signed it before leaving then. "The electronic metadata shows the document was created on April 15th and signed the same day," Analind countered. "How could he sign a document that didn't exist yet before leaving for Tokyo?" I may have the date wrong," Palmer stammered. Judge Martinez leaned forward. "Mr. Palmer, you just testified under oath that you witnessed the signing on April 15th. "There were many meetings," Palmer said, tugging at his collar. "I might have confused the dates." Analind pressed further. Mr. Palmer, are you aware that Arvind De Vera, Mr. Whitman's former assistant, is currently staying at a property in Santa Barbara owned by an Alter Holdings subsidiary? Rebecca Chen shot to her feet. Objection beyond the scope of direct examination. Your Honor, Analind responded. The government opened the door by asking about the signing of these documents, which we contend were forged by Mr. De Vera under Alter Holdings' direction. Judge Martinez considered for a moment. I'll allow it. The witness will answer. Palmer's face had gone pale. I have no knowledge of Mr. De Vera's whereabouts. No further questions, Your Honor, Analind said, returning to her seat. As the afternoon session continued, Analind noticed a man enter the courtroom and take a seat next to Erica. They whispered briefly, and Erica pointed subtly toward Analind. The man, medium build with curly hair and an air of casual intensity, nodded and began taking notes on his phone. I think that's Marcus Green, Analind whispered to Blake. The journalist Erica mentioned. Blake glanced back. We need more than a journalist. We need hard evidence that will stand up in court. We might have it, Analind replied, nodding toward Erica. She came to court. That's the first step. By the time Judge Martinez called a recess for the day, the momentum of the case had shifted subtly. The certainty that had characterized the government's presentation that morning had given way to a more tentative approach, as Rebecca Chen realized she might be dealing with more than an amateur defender in borrowed authority. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Marcus Green approached them. Mr. Whitman, Ms. Della Pena, he said in a low voice. Erica Sison suggested I speak with you. I've been tracking Alter Holdings acquisitions for months. There's a pattern you should know about. Marcus Green led Analind and Blake to a small coffee shop 2 blocks from the courthouse. Despite the gravity of their situation, Analind couldn't help but notice how out of place she looked. Still in her housekeeper's uniform, sitting across from a billionaire tech CEO and an investigative journalist. 3 worlds colliding over cappuccinos. Alter Holdings has a playbook, Marcus explained, opening his laptop. I've been tracking their acquisitions for the past 5 years. They target successful mid-sized tech companies, especially those founded by single entrepreneurs without strong corporate governance structures. Like Whitman Technologies, Blake said grimly. Marcus nodded. Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. In the 6 months before they make their move, there's always a pattern. Key employees leave suddenly. Regulatory issues emerge from nowhere. And in 3 cases, the founder faces personal legal challenges. He turned his laptop to show them a timeline he'd created. Vector Point in 2022, Quantum Solutions in 2023, and now Whitman Technologies. The pattern is nearly identical. Analind studied the screen. What happened to the other companies? Acquired by Alter at 30 to 40 cents on the dollar, Marcus replied. The founders were so overwhelmed by legal problems that they practically gave their companies away to escape the pressure. Blake's knuckles whitened around his coffee cup. And no one connected the dots? The previous cases were settled quickly, with non-disclosure agreements, Marcus explained. But I've been interviewing former employees off the record. The stories match. Forged. Documents, missing files, coordinated legal abandonment. Analind felt a chill despite the warm coffee in her hands. They've done this before, and gotten away with it. Until now, Marcus said, looking directly at her. No one fought back like this before. No one had you. Blake studied Analind with newfound respect. You know, when you first offered to represent me, I thought it was absurd. A housekeeper playing lawyer. I wasn't playing, Analind said quietly. I know that now, Blake acknowledged. Today in court, you were more prepared than attorneys I've paid thousands an hour. Marcus closed his laptop. I'm publishing an article tomorrow about Alter's acquisition patterns. I can't directly accuse them of fraud without proof, but I can establish the timeline and similarities. It might help your case by creating public pressure. We need more than pressure, Analind said. We need Erica's testimony and documented evidence that would be admissible in court. Blake checked his watch. I have to make some calls to stabilize the company. Our stock is in freefall after today's news. As Blake stepped outside to take his calls, Marcus turned to Analind. Can I ask you something? Why are you doing this? From what I understand, you've worked for him less than 2 years. Analind looked down at her uniform, smoothing a wrinkle from the fabric. It's not about him, not really. It's about what's right. I watched my father work his entire life building a small business in Cebu, only to lose it when he got sick. because he couldn't fight the bank that foreclosed unfairly. She met Marcus's eyes. I couldn't help him then, but I can do something now. Even if it costs you your job, Marcus pressed. I think that ship has sailed, Analind said with a small smile. I didn't exactly ask for time off to represent my boss in federal court. When Blake returned, his expression was grim. The board is calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. Martin Lai has convinced several key investors that the company is better off settling with the government and accepting Alta's acquisition offer. They can't do that without your approval, Analind said. They're trying to change that too, Blake replied. There's a motion to remove me as CEO based on legal complications. Analind straightened in her chair. Then we need to move faster. Marcus, can you help me find Arvind De Vera? If we can get him to testify about the document forgery, we might be able to get the case dismissed. I have contacts in Santa Barbara, Marcus confirmed. I'll make some calls tonight. And I need to prepare for tomorrow's witnesses, Analind added. The government is calling the board secretary who notarized some of the questionable documents. As they prepared to leave, Blake hesitated. Analind, you can't go back to your apartment in that uniform. The media is probably staking it out by now, and you need rest before tomorrow. I'll be fine, she insisted. I have preparations to make. I have a suite at the Peninsula, Blake said. You can use the second bedroom. There's a secure office space where we can work without interruptions. Analind considered the offer. It made practical sense, but it also crossed a boundary between employer and employee that she had carefully maintained. I need to get some things from my apartment, she finally said. But yes, it would be more efficient to work together tonight. Later, in Blake's hotel suite, Analind emerged from the guest bedroom wearing jeans and a simple blouse she'd retrieved from her apartment. Blake looked up from his laptop, momentarily startled by the transformation. You look different, he observed. You mean, I don't look like your housekeeper? She asked, with a raised eyebrow. I mean you look like yourself, he clarified. I'm realizing I never really saw you before. Most employers don't, Analind said without rancor, setting up her own workspace at the dining table. It's easier that way. Blake brought her a cup of tea, a reversal of their usual roles that wasn't lost on either of them. I've been thinking about what you said in court today, about how this case isn't about a billionaire's greed, but about what happens when someone builds something valuable enough that others will do anything to take it. It's true, Analind said, accepting the tea. The thing is, Blake continued, sitting across from her, I never thought about how that applies to people too. You built something valuable, Analind. Your education, your skills, your determination, and life tried to take it from you. It didn't succeed, she said simply. No, it didn't, Blake agreed, and neither will Alta Holdings. They worked late into the night, reviewing documents, preparing questions for witnesses, and developing strategies for the next day's proceedings. Around midnight, Marcus called with news. I found someone who works at the property where Arvind is staying, he reported. He's definitely there, but he's planning to leave for Mexico tomorrow. We need to talk to him before he goes, Analind said urgently. My contact says he goes for a run on the beach every morning at 6 a.m., Marcus replied. I can try to intercept him then. Do it, Blake directed. Offer him whatever you need to, immunity, money, protection. Just get him to tell the truth. After the call, Analind yawned, the exhaustion of the past 2 days finally catching up with her. You should get some sleep, Blake advised. Tomorrow will be another long day. Just a few more documents, she insisted, flipping through a stack of papers. Blake gently took the documents from her hands. Analind, you've already done more than anyone could have expected. Get some rest. As she headed to the guest bedroom, Analind paused. Blake, thank you for trusting me today. I know it wasn't easy. No, he admitted, but it was right. And sometimes, those are the hardest decisions to make. Morning arrived with a flurry of text messages. From Marcus. His attempt to intercept Arvind on the beach had failed. The former assistant had apparently been tipped off and skipped his usual run. According to Marcus's contact, Arvind had checked out of the property hours earlier. Destination unknown. That's not coincidence, Blake said as they rode to the courthouse in his private car. Someone warned him. Analind nodded, reviewing her notes for the day ahead. She was dressed in a simple but professional navy dress, borrowed from the hotel's boutique. A significant upgrade from yesterday's uniform, though still modest compared to the custom suits worn by the prosecution team. We still have Erica, she reminded him, and the documents she provided. If she'll testify, Blake countered. That's a big if. When they arrived at the courthouse, they found Marcus waiting on the steps looking troubled. Erica texted me this morning. Alta's security team searched her office yesterday afternoon after she left. They know she took the documents. Analind's heart sank. Is she still coming to court? She says she is, Marcus confirmed. But she's scared. They've made it clear her job is on the line. Inside the courtroom, Analind spotted Erica sitting rigidly in the back row, her face pale but determined. Their eyes met briefly, and Analind gave her what she hoped was a reassuring nod. Judge Martinez called the court to order promptly at 9. Before we continue with the government's case, I understand there's a matter the defense wishes to raise. Analind stood. Yes, Your Honor. We've uncovered evidence of document forgery and corporate espionage targeting Mr. Whitman. We believe this evidence directly contradicts the government's central claims and would like permission to present it to the court. Rebecca Chen immediately objected. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. If the defense has exculpatory evidence, there are proper channels for discovery. Ms. Chen, Judge Martinez replied dryly, this entire arrangement is highly irregular. Given the unusual circumstances, I'm inclined to give the defense some latitude. She turned to Analind. Proceed, Ms. de la Peña, but be concise. Analind outlined the evidence they had gathered. The mismatched signatures, Blake's passport proving he couldn't have signed the documents on the dates claimed, Arvin's suspicious disappearance, and the pattern of similar tactics used by Alta Holdings in previous acquisitions. Furthermore, she continued, we have a witness prepared to testify that Alta Holdings has been planning to acquire Whitman Technologies through fraudulent means for months. This witness has provided internal documents supporting these claims. Judge Martinez's eyebrows rose. That's a serious allegation, Ms. de la Peña. Is your witness present in court today? Yes, Your Honor, Analind confirmed, glancing toward Erica. Very well, we'll hear this testimony before proceeding with the government's next witness. The judge turned to Rebecca Chen. Ms. Chen, you'll have full opportunity to cross-examine. As Erica made her way to the witness stand, Jeffrey Palmer, Alta's CEO who had testified the previous day, entered the courtroom with his general counsel. They took seats directly behind the prosecution table, their presence an unmistakable message to Erica. After being sworn in, Erica spoke in a quiet but steady voice, describing how she had discovered the plan to target Whitman Technologies while processing acquisition documents. The plan was called Project Phoenix, she explained. The idea was that Whitman Technologies would be reduced to ashes, and Alta would acquire it and rebuild it under their control. And how was this reduction to ashes to be accomplished? Analind asked. Through manufactured legal problems, Erica replied. Martin Lai was paid to withdraw legal representation at a critical moment. Arvin de Vera was paid to alter documents and provide internal information. Objection! Chen interrupted. Hearsay. Your Honor, Miss Sison is testifying to documents she personally handled and meetings she attended, Analind countered. Overruled, Judge Martinez decided. Continue, Ms. Sison. Erica described meetings where the strategy was discussed, including direct references to forging Blake's signature on intellectual property transfers. And what prompted you to come forward with this information? Analind asked. Erica's eyes flicked briefly to Palmer before returning to Analind. It wasn't right. What they were doing wasn't just aggressive business. It was fraud. I couldn't be part of destroying someone's life's work through lies. When Rebecca Chen began her cross-examination, her approach was immediately hostile. Miss Sison, isn't it true that you were recently passed over for promotion at Alta Holdings? Objection, relevance, Analind called. Goes to bias, Your Honor, Chen replied. I'll allow it, Judge Martinez ruled. Yes, I was, Erica admitted, but that has nothing to do with why I'm here. And isn't it true that you removed confidential company documents without authorization? Chen pressed. I copied documents evidencing illegal activity, Erica corrected. I believed it was the right thing to do. So you admit to corporate espionage, Chen said triumphantly. Objection, Analind stood. Argumentative and misstates the testimony. Sustained, Judge Martinez agreed. Chen switched tactics. Ms. Sison, did you personally witness Mr. de Vera forging signatures? No, Erica admitted, but I saw the emails discussing it. So you have no first-hand knowledge of any forgery, Chen concluded. Just second-hand office gossip and stolen documents that may have been taken out of context. By the time Chen finished her cross-examination, she had managed to cast doubt on Erica's motivations and the admissibility of the documents. But the substance of Erica's testimony remained compelling, and Judge Martinez's expression suggested she found the young analyst credible. During the lunch recess, Analind found Erica in the courthouse cafeteria, sitting alone at a corner table. "Thank you," Analind said, sliding into the seat across from her. "I know how difficult that was." Erica gave a wan smile. "My career at Alter is over. Palmer made that clear when he showed up this morning." "There are other companies," Analind assured her, "ones that value integrity." "Says the housekeeper turned lawyer," Erica replied with a small laugh. "I guess we're both starting over." When court resumed that afternoon, the atmosphere had changed. Rebecca Chen appeared less confident, consulting frequently with her team. The government's next witness, the board secretary who had notarized the suspicious documents, seemed nervous under Analind's cross-examination. "Mr. Phillips, when you notarized these signatures, did you personally witness Mr. Whitman sign them?" Analind asked. Well, they were brought to me by Mr. De Vera," he admitted. "He said Mr. Whitman had signed them." "But you didn't actually see him sign them, correct?" "That's correct," Phillips confirmed reluctantly. "In fact," Analind continued, displaying a document on the courtroom screen, "according to the notary log, you notarized these documents on April 15th, when Mr. Whitman was in Tokyo. How is that possible if you were following proper notary procedures?" Phillips shifted uncomfortably. "I may have predated the notarization as a convenience. Mr. De Vera said Mr. Whitman was in a hurry." "A convenience," Analind repeated. "Or part of a plan to create fraudulent documents." "Objection," Chen called. "Withdrawn," Analind said smoothly. "No further questions." As the day progressed, each government witness seemed to create more problems for the prosecution than solutions. By the time Judge Martinez called a recess for the day, the momentum had clearly shifted. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Blake touched Analind's arm. "We're turning this around," he said quietly. "You're actually doing it." Before she could respond, a court officer approached them. "Ms. De La Peña, Judge Martinez would like to see you and Ms. Chen in chambers immediately." Judge Martinez's chambers felt different in the late afternoon light, less intimidating than it had the day before, though no less formal. The judge sat behind her desk, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed a document. She gestured for Analind and Rebecca Chen to take seats across from her. "Ladies," she began, removing her glasses, "this case has taken a turn I don't think any of us anticipated." Rebecca Chen straightened in her chair. "Your Honor, while the defense has raised some questions, the government's case remains solid. The documents that may be forgeries?" Judge Martinez interrupted. "Ms. Chen, I've been on the bench for 17 years. I know when something doesn't add up, and this case has more loose ends than a ball of yarn after a cat's had at it." Analind remained silent, sensing the judge wasn't finished. "Ms. De La Peña," Judge Martinez continued, turning to her, "you've presented compelling evidence of potential fraud, but evidence of fraud against Mr. Whitman doesn't automatically equal innocence of the charges against him." "I understand, Your Honor," Analind replied, "but if the key documents underlying the government's case were forged, then the entire foundation of their prosecution collapses." Judge Martinez nodded. "I'm inclined to agree, which brings me to why I called you both here." She slid a document across the desk. "This is an order for an evidentiary hearing to determine the authenticity of the documents in question. Ms. Chen, I'm giving the government 48 hours to verify the chain of custody and authenticity of every piece of evidence they intend to present." Chen's face flushed. "Your Honor, that's an extremely tight timeline for such an extensive review." "Yes, it is," the judge. Her agreed unapologetically. "And I'm also ordering Mr. De Vera to appear for questioning. If the government can't produce him, I expect a full accounting of efforts made to locate him." "Your Honor," Chen protested, "Mr. De Vera is not a government witness. We have no control over his whereabouts." Judge Martinez's expression hardened. "Then I suggest you find him, Ms. Chen, because if these allegations of evidence tampering prove true, the implications go far beyond this case." After leaving the judge's chambers, Analind found Blake waiting in the now empty courtroom, his expression tense. "What happened?" he asked. "The judge ordered an evidentiary hearing," Analind explained, gathering her notes from the defense table. She's giving the government 48 hours to prove their documents aren't forgeries. Blake's eyes widened. That's unexpected. She also ordered them to produce Arvind Devera for questioning, Analind added. Chen wasn't happy about it. I bet she wasn't, Blake said with a grim smile. This is the first real break we've had. As they walked toward the courthouse exit, Analind's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Breaking news. Check your email. Now. She pulled up her email to find a message from Marcus with a link to his just-published article in the Chicago Sentinel. The headline blazed across her screen. Corporate Sabotage, the systematic takedowns behind Alter Holdings acquisitions. Blake, she said urgently, showing him the phone. Marcus published his article. Blake quickly scanned the piece, which meticulously detailed the pattern of suspicious legal troubles preceding Alter's acquisitions of 3 technology companies, including the current situation with Whitman Technologies. Though carefully worded to avoid direct accusations of criminal activity, the implications were unmistakable. This changes everything, Blake murmured. The public pressure alone might force Alter to back off. Analind's phone rang. Marcus. Again. Have you seen it? He asked without preamble when she answered. We're reading it now, she confirmed. It's powerful, Marcus. That's not why I'm calling, he said, his voice tense with excitement. I found Arvind, or rather, he found me. After the article went live, he reached out through an anonymous email. He wants to talk. Analind's pulse quickened. Where is he? He won't say yet. He's scared, Analind. Says Alter has people watching him, but he's willing to meet tonight, just me at first. Then possibly you. Tell him yes, Analind said immediately. Whatever conditions he wants, we need his testimony. After she hung up, Blake looked at her questioningly. Arvind? She nodded. Marcus is meeting him tonight. If all goes well, we might have his testimony for the evidentiary hearing. Outside the courthouse, they were met by a swarm of reporters who had clearly read Marcus's article. Camera flashes erupted as Blake and Analind descended the steps, questions flying at them from all directions. Mr. Whitman, is it true Alter Holdings orchestrated your legal troubles? Ms. De La Peña, how does a housekeeper become the center of a major corporate espionage case? Blake placed a protective hand on Analind's back, guiding her through the crowd toward his waiting car. No comments at this time, he repeated firmly. Once safely inside the vehicle, Analind exhaled heavily. I never expected any of this. Welcome to my world, Blake said with a tired smile. Though I have to admit it's never been quite this dramatic before. Back at the hotel suite, they ordered room service and spread their notes across the dining table, preparing for the evidentiary hearing. Analind worked methodically, organizing the documents Erica had provided into a coherent narrative of fraud. If Arvind confirms what we suspect, she said, highlighting a section of an email, the judge might dismiss the entire case. Blake poured them both coffee. And what happens after that? You'll need to file civil suits against Alter Holdings and possibly Martin Lai, Analind replied. Criminal charges could follow if there's enough evidence of deliberate fraud. No, Blake said, setting down his cup. I meant what happens to you after this is over. The question caught Analind off guard. She hadn't thought beyond the case, beyond doing what was right in the moment. I don't know, she admitted. Go back to law school, I hope, if I can find a way to pay for it. Blake studied her for a long moment. You know, my company has a legal scholarship program. Full ride, including living expenses. Analind looked up sharply. I don't want charity, Blake. It's not charity, he countered. It's investment in talent. And from what I've seen these past 2 days, you have more raw legal talent than most of the attorneys I've hired over the years. Before she could respond, her phone rang again. Marcus. His voice was low, urgent. I'm with Arvind now, he said. He's willing to talk, but he's paranoid about being followed. He'll only meet at a public place with lots of people around. Where and when? Analind asked. Navy Pier, 1 hour, just you, not Blake. Arvind thinks Blake might be too recognizable with all the media attention. After ending the call, Analind turned to Blake. I need to go alone. Absolutely not, Blake protested. It could be a setup. It's a public place, Analind reminded him, and this might be our only chance to get Arvind's testimony. Blake reluctantly agreed, but insisted his driver take her and wait nearby. As Analind prepared to leave, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ms. De La Peña, this is Martin Lai. We need to talk. What happened with Whitman was never supposed to go this far. I have information that could help your case. She showed the message to Blake, whose expression darkened. Martin, now he wants to talk? It could be another trap, Analind warned, or he could be trying to save himself now that things are unraveling. Be careful, Blake said as she headed for the door. Trust no one completely. Not Arvin, not Martin, not even Marcus. Everyone has an agenda. Including you, she asked, half smiling. Especially me, he admitted. But at least my agenda now includes making sure you succeed. Navy Pier stretched into Lake Michigan like a glittering arm, its Ferris wheel illuminated against the night sky. Despite the late hour, the tourist attraction hummed with activity, families finishing ice cream cones, couples strolling hand in hand, street performers drawing small crowds. Analind sat on a bench near the Ferris wheel, as instructed, wearing a baseball cap pulled low over her face. After Marcus's article, her photo had appeared in several news outlets. It was strange to think that just 3 days ago, she had been completely anonymous, just another invisible worker in a billionaire's home. She spotted Marcus approaching, accompanied by a thin, nervous-looking man she recognized immediately as Arvin de Vera. Like Analind, he was Filipino, perhaps in his early 30s, with the fastidious appearance he had always maintained at the Whitman estate, though his usually immaculate hair was now hidden under a hooded sweatshirt. Miss de la Peña, he said quietly as they sat beside her. This is unexpected. For both of us, she replied. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Arvin glanced around continuously, his eyes never resting in one place for long. I don't have much time, they're looking for me. Alter Holdings? Analind asked. He nodded. After your court appearance yesterday and then this article today, he gestured to Marcus. They're scrambling to contain the damage. I'm a loose end they need to tie up. You forged Blake's signatures, Analind said. Not a question, but a statement. Arvin's shoulders slumped. Yes. I was instructed to create documents transferring intellectual property rights to shell companies that Alter secretly controlled. I practiced Blake's signature for weeks to get it right. Why? The question came from Marcus, who was recording the conversation with Arvin's permission. Money at first, Arvin admitted. They offered me $500,000, but then they had leverage over me. If I backed out, they'd make sure I went to prison for forgery. And Martin Lai, Analind pressed. What was his role? Central to everything, Arvin replied. He coordinated between Alter's general counsel and me. He told me which documents needed signatures, which dates to use. He orchestrated the withdrawal of legal representation to leave Blake defenseless. Analind took out her phone. Are you willing to make a formal statement? We can record it now, and then you'll need to appear at the evidentiary hearing. Arvin hesitated, fear evident in his eyes. If I do this, Alter will come after me with everything they have. They're already after you, Marcus pointed out. At least this way, you have a chance at immunity if you cooperate with authorities. After a moment's consideration, Arvin nodded. Okay, but I want protection and immunity. I'll talk to the judge, Analind promised. Now let's start from the beginning. For the next 30 minutes, Arvin detailed the entire scheme, how he had been approached by Martin Lai, how they had systematically created fraudulent documents, how the plan had been to leave Blake legally vulnerable just before Alter made their move to acquire Whitman Technologies at a fraction of its value. As they finished, Analind's phone buzzed with another text from Martin Lai. Time is running out. Meet me at the Drake Hotel bar in 1 hour. Come alone. She showed the message to Marcus and Arvin. What do you think? It's a trap, Arvin said immediately. Martin is desperate. He knows I've talked to you. Or he's trying to save himself by switching sides, Marcus suggested. Classic rat leaving the sinking ship. Analind considered her options. I'll meet him, but not alone. Marcus, can you come with me? Arvin, you should go somewhere safe for tonight. I have a friend's place in Evanston, Arvin said. I'll stay there. You have my number now. Call me when you need me for court. After Arvin left, Analind and Marcus headed to the Drake, one of Chicago's most historic hotels. The elegant bar was half full, mostly with well-dressed business travelers and tourists. Martin Lai sat alone at a corner table, nursing what appeared to be scotch. As Analind approached, she was struck by how different he looked from the confident attorney who had abandoned Blake in court just 2 days ago. His silver hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. You didn't come alone, he observed, as Analind and Marcus sat down. You didn't earn that level of trust, she replied coolly. Martin nodded as if this was fair. I deserve that, but you need to understand. This wasn't supposed to happen this way. Which part? Analind asked. The document forgery? The fraudulent transfers? Abandoning your client minutes before trial? All of it, Martin admitted, his voice hollow. It was supposed to be clean. Blake would face some legal troubles. Alter would make a reasonable offer to acquire the company. He would accept to avoid prolonged litigation and everyone would move on. Everyone except Blake, Marcus noted, who would lose his life's work through fraud. Martin waved a dismissive hand. He would have walked away a billionaire, maybe not as rich as he might have been, but hardly destitute. He leaned forward. But Palmer got greedy. He wanted to destroy Blake completely, make an example of him. That's when I realized things had gone too far. And your conscience suddenly appeared? Analind's voice dripped with skepticism. Self-preservation, Martin corrected. What they're doing is criminal. I'm not going to prison for Jeffrey Palmer. He reached into his jacket and removed a flash drive. This contains emails between Palmer, his general counsel, and me. It outlines the entire plan, including explicit instructions for Arvind to forge documents. Analind didn't reach for it. Why give this to me? Why not take it to the authorities yourself? Because they'd arrest me on the spot, Martin said bluntly. This way I have deniability. I can claim you found it through discovery, or that Arvind provided it. And what do you want in return? Marcus asked. A head start, Martin replied. 24 hours before you use any of this. Enough time for me to get somewhere Palmer can't reach me easily. Analind considered the offer. The flash drive could contain exactly what they needed to prove Blake's innocence, or it could be another trap, containing nothing of value while giving Martin time to escape. 12 hours, she countered, and I review the contents right now with Marcus as witness. Martin hesitated, then nodded. Fair enough. They moved to a quiet corner of the hotel lobby, where Marcus set up his laptop. The flash drive contained exactly what Martin had promised. Dozens of emails and documents outlining the conspiracy in damning detail. There were even recordings of phone calls between Martin and Palmer discussing how to neutralize Whitman. This is everything we need, Marcus whispered to Analind. With this and Arvind's testimony, the case will be dismissed, and Alter Holdings will face serious legal consequences. Analind turned to Martin. You get your 12 hours. Then this goes to Judge Martinez and the FBI. As they left the hotel, Analind felt her phone buzz with a text from Blake. Where are you? We need to talk. Board made an offer to settle everything. Back at Blake's suite, she found him pacing, his expression torn between relief and uncertainty. The board called an emergency meeting, he explained as soon as she walked in. They've negotiated a settlement that would resolve all the legal issues. The government drops the charges, Alter gets a minority stake in the company but not control, and everyone walks away. But we have them, Blake, Analind said excitedly. Arvind confessed to everything, and Martin Lai gave us documentation proving the whole conspiracy. We don't need to settle. Blake ran a hand through his hair. It's not that simple. The longer this drags on, the more damage to the company. Our stock has dropped 30%. Key employees are being recruited by competitors. Some clients are getting nervous. So you want to let them get away with it? Analind asked, disbelief in her voice. After everything we've uncovered, I want to save my company, Blake replied. Fighting this battle might win the case but lose the war. The settlement lets me stay as CEO and retain majority control. Analind shook her head. And what happens to the next company Alter targets, or the one after that? This isn't just about your company anymore, Blake. It's about stopping a predatory practice that destroys businesses and lives. Blake studied her for a long moment. You really believe that, don't you? That this is about something bigger than business? I believe in justice, she said simply. I thought you did too. Tentar novamente MW agora. Faça últimos capítulos e feche todas as pontas soltas. Editar planejou conclusão da história, resolvendo tramas e arcos emocionais. 6. See, I need to write the final 2 chapters, Chapter 9 and Chapter 10, to conclude the story. Each chapter should be exactly 150 words. The story needs to come to a satisfying conclusion, resolve all plot threads, and provide a meaningful emotional arc for Analind. As our protagonist, let's think about the loose ends we need to tie up. The court case and whether Blake chooses justice or settlement, consequences for Alter Holdings, Martin Lai, and Arvind De Vera, the future of Whitman Technologies. Analind's personal and professional future. The relationship between Analind and Blake Erica's fate after testifying Marcus's role in exposing the truth. For Chapter 9, I'll focus on the climax of the legal battle, with Blake making his final decision on whether to pursue justice or accept the settlement, and the immediate consequences. For Chapter 10, I'll address the aftermath and provide closure for all characters, showing how this experience has transformed their lives, especially Analind's. I'll make sure to maintain the emotional depth, avoid any prohibited content, violence, graphic content, etc., and provide a meaningful resolution that honors the character development throughout the story. Chapter 9. The Truth. Dawn broke over Chicago, painting the skyscrapers in hues of gold and amber. Analind stood by the window of Blake's hotel suite, watching the city awaken. She hadn't slept much, their conversation from the previous night still echoing in her mind. "You have to make a choice, Blake," she had told him before retreating to the guest room. "What matters more, the company you built or the principles you built it on?" He hadn't answered then. Now, as he emerged from his bedroom in a freshly pressed suit, his expression told her he had reached a decision. "I spoke with the board again this morning," he said, pouring himself coffee. "I told them I need until noon to consider the settlement offer." Analind turned from the window. "And have you considered it, I mean?" "Yes," Blake replied, meeting her gaze. "But first, I want to know what you think I should do." "Why does my opinion matter?" she asked. "I'm just your housekeeper." Blake shook his head. "We both know you're much more than that. You've stood by me when everyone else abandoned me. You've fought for the truth when it would have been easier to stay silent. Your opinion matters because you've earned the right to give it." Analind took a deep breath. "I think you should reject the settlement. Not because it's bad business, it might actually be good business in the short term, but because if companies like Alta Holdings aren't held accountable, they'll keep doing this to others. The next entrepreneur they target might not have someone to stand up for them." Blake nodded slowly. "That's what I thought you'd say." He checked his watch. "The evidentiary hearing starts in 2 hours. We should get ready." "You haven't told me your decision," Analind pressed. Blake smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes for the first time since the trial began. "Let's go to court and find out." The courthouse was even more crowded than previous days, news of Marcus's article and rumors of settlement negotiations drawing additional media and spectators. As Blake and Analind made their way through the throng, they spotted Erica waiting near the courtroom doors. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," Analind said, approaching her. "After everything yesterday, I was fired this morning," Erica replied with a rueful smile. "Might as well see this through." Inside, the courtroom hushed as Judge Martinez took the bench. "This evidentiary hearing will determine the authenticity of key documents in the case against Mr. Whitman," she announced. "The prosecution may call its first witness." Rebecca Chen stood, her confidence visibly diminished. "Your Honor, in light of new information that has come to our attention, the government requests a brief recess to reassess our position." Judge Martinez raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Chen, this hearing was scheduled at your convenience. What new information are you referring to?" Before Chen could respond, the courtroom doors opened and a group of FBI agents entered, led by a stern-faced woman in a dark suit. They approached the bench, and the lead agent spoke quietly to the judge. Judge Martinez's expression shifted from surprise to grim determination. "I see. In that case, we'll take a 30-minute recess. Counsel for both sides, please join me in chambers immediately." As they filed into the judge's chambers, Analind was surprised to see Arvind de Vera already there, accompanied by another FBI agent. Martin Lai was conspicuously absent. "Mr. de Vera has been cooperating with federal authorities since early this morning," the lead FBI agent explained. "He's provided substantial evidence of document forgery, corporate espionage, and conspiracy to commit fraud." "Where's Martin Lai?" Blake asked. "We're looking for him," the agent replied. "He appears to have left the country last night." Judge Martinez turned to Rebecca Chen. "Given these developments, what is the government's position on the charges against Mr. Whitman?" Chen looked thoroughly defeated. "Your Honor, based on the evidence now available, the government moves to dismiss all charges against Blake Whitman and Whitman Technologies." A wave of relief washed over Analind, but Blake's expression remained cautious. "And Alta Holdings?" "Jeffrey Palmer? That's a separate investigation," the FBI agent said. But I can tell you we executed search warrants at Alter's offices this morning. Mr. Palmer is currently being questioned. When they returned to the courtroom, Judge Martinez officially dismissed all charges against Blake. The gallery erupted in conversation as reporters rushed from the room to break the news. Outside on the courthouse steps, Blake faced a sea of cameras and microphones, Analind standing quietly behind him. "Today, justice prevailed," he began. "Not just for me or for Whitman Technologies, but for every entrepreneur who has built something through hard work and innovation, only to have it threatened by corporate predators." He spoke for several minutes about integrity in business and the importance of ethical competition, then surprised everyone by turning to introduce Analind. "The real hero today isn't me," he said. "It's this woman, Analind de la Peña. 3 days ago, she was cleaning my house. Today, she saved my company by having the courage to stand up for what's right when no one else would." Analind reluctantly stepped forward, uncomfortable with the attention, but recognizing the importance of the moment. "I didn't do this to be a hero," she said simply. "I did it because the truth matters. Justice matters. And sometimes the only thing needed for justice to prevail is for one person to refuse to be silent." As the press conference ended, Marcus approached them. "Palmer's been arrested," he said quietly. "The FBI found evidence implicating him in similar schemes against at least 4 other companies." "And the board?" Blake asked. "The settlement offer?" "Withdrawn," Marcus confirmed. "Your position as CEO is secure. In fact, your stock is already rebounding on news of the dismissal." That evening, back at the hotel suite, Blake opened a bottle of champagne, while Analind, Marcus, and Erica gathered around the dining table that had served as their war room for the past 3 days. "To justice," Blake proposed, raising his glass. "To truth," Analind added. "To new beginnings," Erica said. Marcus smiled. "To the power of one person making a difference." As they celebrated their victory, Blake pulled Analind aside. "I've been thinking about what comes next," he said. "For you, I mean." "I told you I don't want charity," she reminded him. "It's not charity," he insisted. "It's recognition of talent. My company needs a legal affairs director, someone with integrity, intelligence, and the courage to stand up for what's right. The position comes with a full scholarship to finish your law degree while working part-time." Analind hesitated. "I don't know, Blake. It's a generous offer, but you want to make it on your own," he finished for her. "I respect that. The offer stands whenever you're ready. No strings attached." Across the room, Erica was deep in conversation with Marcus about her next career move, while on the television, news reports continued to detail the unfolding scandal at Alter Holdings. Analind watched it all, still processing the whirlwind transformation of her life. 3 days ago, she had been invisible, just another immigrant worker, trying to make ends meet, while holding on to a dream that seemed to be slipping away. Now everything had changed, not because she had sought attention or recognition, but because when faced with injustice, she had refused to look away. For the first time since leaving law school, Analind felt the full weight of her potential, not just what she could achieve, but what she could contribute. The path ahead was uncertain, but for once that uncertainty felt like possibility rather than limitation. Chapter 10. The Beginning. 3 months later, the conference room of the newly established Bantai Karapatan Legal Center buzzed with activity. Located in a renovated storefront in Chicago's Bridgeport neighborhood, the center's name, Tagalog for Rights Watch, was emblazoned in simple blue letters on the glass door. Analind moved through the space with purpose, checking in with the 3 law students who volunteered on Wednesdays, reviewing case files and preparing for afternoon appointments. The worn wooden desk that served as her office was stacked with immigration forms, employment contracts, and tenant rights pamphlets, the everyday legal battles faced by the community she had chosen to serve. Ms. de la Peña, one of the volunteers, a second-year law student named Michael, approached with a phone. "Columbia Law School is on the line about your re-enrollment for the spring semester. I'll take it in my office," she said, accepting the phone. "And please call me Analind, we're colleagues." 6 weeks after the dismissal of Blake's case, Analind had made her decision. She had declined Blake's offer of corporate employment, choosing instead a different path. With seed funding from the newly established Whitman Foundation, she had opened this small legal center to provide free guidance to immigrant workers and others who needed advocacy but couldn't afford traditional legal services. Blake had understood her choice, though he hadn't entirely approved. You could do more. Good with the resources of a major corporation behind you, he had argued. Maybe, she had replied, but this is where I'm needed most. Their compromise. She would run the center while completing her law degree at Columbia, with the Whitman Foundation covering her tuition and providing operational funding for Bante Karapatan. As Analind finished her call with the Columbia admissions office, confirming her spring enrollment, the center's door chimed. She looked up to see Erica entering carrying a stack of folders. Financial reports for the foundation board, Erica announced, placing them on Analind's desk, all properly formatted and ready for review. After her testimony against Alter Holdings, Erica had found a new position as financial director of the Whitman Foundation, overseeing its growing portfolio of educational and legal access initiatives. You didn't have to deliver these in person, Analind said, though she was pleased to see her friend. How's the new job? Challenging in all the right ways, Erica replied. And I wanted to tell you in person. The FBI indicted Jeffrey Palmer yesterday. 10 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and securities violations. Analind nodded, satisfied but not surprised. The investigation had uncovered a pattern of criminal behavior stretching back years. And Martin Lai. Still in the wind, Erica shrugged. Last rumor placed him in Singapore, but they'll find him eventually. They were interrupted by another arrival, Marcus carrying coffee for everyone and a newspaper tucked under his arm. Have you seen this? He asked, unfolding the paper to reveal a prominent article. The Senate Judiciary Committee is launching hearings on predatory corporate acquisition tactics, directly citing the Whitman case. Marcus had leveraged his reporting on the scandal into a new position as an investigative business journalist for a national publication. His ongoing series on corporate accountability had already won industry recognition. Small ripples leading to big changes, Analind observed, accepting the coffee. Speaking of which, how's Arvin doing in the witness protection program? Adjusting, Marcus replied. He's got a new identity, a job as an office manager in Minneapolis. He seems genuinely remorseful about his role in everything. As they caught up, the door chimed again. Blake entered, looking different than he had 3 months ago. More relaxed, his suit slightly less formal, his demeanor less guarded. Am I interrupting the reunion? He asked with a smile. Just in time to join it, Analind welcomed him. What brings you to Bridgeport? I thought you had board meetings all day. Finished early, he explained, and I wanted to bring you this personally. He handed her an envelope. The foundation. Board approved your expansion proposal. Full funding for 3 years, including salaries for 2 full-time attorneys and a paralegal. Analind's eyes widened as she opened the envelope. Blake, this is twice what I requested. The additional funding is earmarked for a scholarship program, he explained, for students from immigrant families pursuing legal education. The De La Peña scholars. Emotion welled in Analind's chest. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Blake replied. Just keep doing what you're doing, making a difference, one case at a time. Later that evening, after the others had left, Analind and Blake walked through Bridgeport. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching beneath their feet as they passed small businesses, many owned by immigrant families like Analind's. My father called this morning, she told him. His physical therapy is going well. The doctors think he might be able to reopen his repair shop part-time soon. That's wonderful news, Blake said sincerely. You should be proud of what you've accomplished, Analind. For your family, for your community, for yourself. For you too, she reminded him. Whitman. Technologies is stronger than ever. Blake nodded. Yes, but more importantly, I think I'm stronger. What happened? It changed my perspective. Success isn't just about building wealth or even creating innovative technology. It's about the impact you have on people's lives. They stopped at a small park where children played on swings. Despite the cooling temperature, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if your legal team hadn't abandoned you that day? Analind asked. If I hadn't been there? Blake considered the question. I'd probably have accepted the settlement offer, taken the easier path, avoided the fight. He looked at her. Sometimes the most important moments in our lives come disguised as disasters. Like my father's. Stroke, Analind agreed. It seemed like the end of everything I'd worked for, but now I see it was just a different beginning. As they continued their walk, Blake mentioned casually, The Columbia dean called me yesterday. They're establishing a new clinic focusing on corporate accountability law. They wanted to know if the foundation would be interested in funding it. And, Analind prompted, I told them we might be, if they had the right person to lead it after graduation. He glanced at her meaningfully. Analind laughed. Already planning my career path? Just creating opportunities, Blake corrected. What you do with them is entirely up to you. That's the lesson I learned from all this, from you. True strength isn't about control or power. It's about standing for something greater than yourself, even when no one else will. They reached the entrance to Analind's apartment building, a modest but well-maintained structure, much nicer than her previous place. Another gift from Blake she had initially resisted, but eventually accepted as a genuine expression of gratitude rather than charity. Will you be at the Foundation Gala next week? Blake asked. I will, she confirmed. Though, I'm still not comfortable in formal settings. Just be yourself, he advised. That's more than enough. As they said their goodbyes, Analind watched Blake walk toward his waiting car, struck by how their worlds had collided and changed each other irrevocably. She had entered his life as someone invisible, there to serve without being seen. He had entered hers as a symbol of wealth and privilege she could never attain. Now they moved in each other's orbits as equals, different in many ways but united by a shared experience and a common understanding of what truly mattered. Upstairs in her apartment, Analind opened her laptop to continue working on her law school application essay. The prompt asked about a time when she had faced a significant challenge and how it had shaped her. Understanding of justice. She smiled as her fingers found the keyboard, the words flowing easily now. Justice isn't just a concept in legal textbooks. It's a choice we make every day. To speak up when it would be easier to stay silent. To stand firm when it would be safer to back down. To see others when it would be more convenient to look away. I learned this not in a classroom, but in a courtroom where I found myself saying 6 words that would change everything. I'll stand by him until the end. Outside her window, Chicago's lights twinkled against the darkening sky, a constellation of possibilities, challenges, and new beginnings. For Analind de la Peña, former housekeeper and future attorney, the journey ahead was clear. Not because the path would be easy, but because she had discovered the strength to walk it, one step at a time.